So the United States just announced it's getting ready for a war with China and Putin at the same time.
Are you ready to go to war then between US and China with Russia as China's ally? Who do you think is going to win this world war? I'm here to tell you that China has no chance of beating the United States. But you know, there is a country that could easily beat the United States. Do you know who I'm talking about? The country that can beat America is so powerful that has military bases all around the world, more than 1,000 of them surrounding China and Russia. This powerful nation has so many allies and they're all rich, wealthy countries around the world that could easily defeat China and Russia combined economically through sanctions. This country also has the most powerful media and social media companies in the world and news services in the world that could influence the world's opinion in its favor. China only has like TikTok and maybe Shein or something. Look at all this. How can this country ever be defeatable? Do you know who I'm talking about here? Yes, of course, I'm talking about America itself, the United States. The only country that can beat America is America itself. The only person that can beat Superman is Superman himself, much younger version. But how is the United States beating itself, you ask? Well, look at this. US surrounds its supposed enemies like China and Russia with more than 1,000 military bases. And how many military bases does China have? It has one in Djibouti, right there, compared to 1,000 or more with the US routed around the world. What's the disadvantage of that, you ask? Well, Donald Trump actually named it. I'm not pro the left or the right, but it was actually Trump during his presidential election speech to say he wants to withdraw troops. And this is alarming, of course, to the military, to the Pentagon. Why? Because he says this is costing too much money to feed and clothe and equip and pay more than 1,000 US military bases around the world. What do you need 1,000 military bases around the world for when China only has one? That's in East Africa to protect its own trade routes. And famously, Trump actually wanted South Korea to pay for its US military presence there, to pay for the protection that they're affording them. He did this to a number of countries around the world. The guy has a point. See, United States spends 16% of its national budget every year on national defense, and US is in a massive budget deficit every year. That's why they gotta issue so many bonds, treasury bonds, because they need to borrow money from overseas, from countries such as China, which lends its money to the United States for its military spending. But look how little China spends compared to the US, compared to the rest of the world. And point number two is that US has many allies in NATO, but however, recently they're outraged by what's happening with Ukraine and Russia. The energy prices in Europe are soaring through the roof and they've had a tough time. They're wanting out of this relationship. And it's very obvious that America's biggest enemy and war right now is domestic. It's its American culture wars. Do you think the US will win this one?